because viewers, if they know that, so if they think something's not real and promotion's pretending like it is real, then they'll get bored of that. But if you're upfront with them about what's going on, but can find ways to entertain them, and when they think they know something, to change it, then that's how you get the attention of the audience, is that you may tell them how a power slam works, how a suplex works, but when they see a new move or somebody falling 20 foot from the scaffold, they think, wow, they're really putting their bodies on the line, there is no way that you can prevent her doing these things. So that's how they kept their interest, that's how viewership went up in the late 90s.
That reminds me of how the matches have changed as well, because they're doing more performances now, aren't they?
Yeah.
More higher risk moves instead of a more drag out match which will last longer to entertain the audience. If they do that now, people will just say boring, boo.
Exactly.
It's all changed now, isn't it?
The wrestling business is a much more fast-paced business than it used to be. Back in the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, Hulk Hogan would go on title runs that would last 2 years, and he'd fight 3 guys, he'd only feud with 3 different guys during that period, and the fans wouldn't bore of it. But now, because the DVD sales, the internet, the Sky, the digital, the cable TV, the people can get so much footage and watch so much footage a week that now, and also we live in a more fast-paced world when we want everything as if it's today. We can go online and click a few buttons and order our shopping, which used to take us an hour to do, and things like that. So society we want things more sped up, and that's what the wrestling world has done. That wrestlers now only have title. If a wrestler has a title reign of a year, that's seen as a major feat in today's industry. And now on episodes of Raw, if a match goes more than 5 minutes on a TV program, you think you're watching a long-paced match. But the only downside this is having, because wrestlers are having to play a dangerous game of top dis, which is when somebody's gone out and done what we call a high spot in the business, which is when they've done something which is death-defying, or done a huge leap which catches the audience in amazement. Then that puts the pressure on that wrestler that's done that move next week. The fans have already seen you leap 20 foot off a balcony. What can you do this week to top that? So this means that a lot of wrestlers' careers are shortening because they're having to take higher risks to entertain the audience, and that has a toll on their bodies, so they're not in the business for as long as they used to be. There is still a place in the market for the more long, drawn-out matches. But it needs what we call in business good storytellers to make them work, and it's more of an ability to keep a wrestling fan entertained for 20-25 minutes without having to leap off a balcony. That's an art form, rather than having to hit 20 moonsaults or flips or leaps in 5 minutes to entertain the crowd. Which it's the top guys get main event status that can entertain the crowd for 20 to 30 minutes without having to do all the leaps and flips.
That's true. I don't really see a lot of matches, but I think the last one I remember was I really got involved in. I saw it happening, and I was going to tell it really good, and it was like, oh, this is a boring match, this is rubbish. You just hear it in the crowd saying, boring, do something there. Yeah, do something more than a headlock. But I got there and it's like, so this is watching on TV, this one.
Yeah.
It was a match with Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That match there was like, I hadn't felt for a long time.
Exactly, and that's what wrestling fans want, is to be able to suspend belief. For that 15-20 will have long matches, to be able to get into a match and forget that the outside world exists for that time. People watch TV or get interested in things for that escapism from their everyday life, and that's what they want. And if 2 wrestlers can do that well, then they earn a lot of money, because that's the true art of wrestling, is to be able to get people to suspend their disbelief. And even the greatest wrestlers can do that to people that think wrestling's fake to start with. You can put them in front of that match, and then at the end they think, I really enjoyed that match. That is the true art of a wrestler, in my opinion. So yes, that's my views on that. And like I say, those are the people that earn the money. There aren't many of them around in today's business, because people want to be entertained, but unfortunately there is a place for the high spot matches that last 5 minutes and the hour-long Ironman matches, It's like if you watch TV in an evening, 5 million people may watch EastEnders, but 5 million people prefer Coronation Street. If you're going out for fast food, some people like McDonald's, some people like Pizza Hut. You have to have, in a 2-hour show on a weekly basis or a 3-hour pay-per-view, you have to try and get as much of the audience, as many different people watching, appease them as possible. So in that show, which may have 5 matches, you've got to make those 5 matches different to try and entertain as many sections of the audience as possible. Because one of the biggest wrestling promotions, which are always known as the third promotion, which were called ECW, they specialised in doing a lot of hardcore matches, but because they didn't have the production values and every night were going out doing the same thing, although I found it entertaining and a lot of the hardcore wrestling fans did, because they only appeased to one section of the market, they never grew as big as they could have if they'd made a more varied show, and that's why I believe one of the reasons why they went out of business.
Do you want to take a break for the time being?
No, I'm happy. It's up to you. If you've got more questions, I could talk for England. So there is one section of wrestling which is called backyard wrestling, which when wrestling grew, backyard wrestling grew, this is people watch wrestling on TV every week, want to be like their idols, but don't want to put in the discipline to get in shape and to go to a proper wrestling school and to do things the proper way. They just want to watch a TV show and be able to reenact it, and they'll go in their back garden, set up some pretend wrestling ring, and then beat out their friends. They're not really knowing what they're doing, they're guessing how things are done, but without any real insider knowledge, and a lot of the times they're hurting themselves. Now this died down a bit, but then when YouTube took off and video sharing websites really hit off, there's another way for them to expand, because they can now video themselves promoting wrestling matches, put it onto YouTube and get millions of people watching, and to try and get some of that stardom that they see their idols getting, but from the internet community.
There's a part of it where the audience sometimes can't tell if you're actually in pain or if you're actually...
Exactly, because part of being a wrestler is knowing how to sell, which is another kayfabe term. Selling is the art of when somebody's doing some offensive manoeuvres, say if they're doing a lot of submission moves on your arm and chopping your arm down. Although yes, they are hurting your arm, you're not in that much pain, but you sell it like you've just broken your arm and just make it that much believable. The only problem with that is that when a wrestler gets hurt legitimately, wrestling fans now think that he is just selling it and that it's part of the show. Whether back in the 1960s, 70s, if a wrestler stayed down injured because they still believed in the sport element of it, they'd think, dang, he is really injured. And if it was the case that he was really injured, that the crowd would know about it. But now in the entertainment world of wrestling is, they do a lot of stuff backstage where wrestlers get put into ambulances and carted off, which is just for TV entertainment. But because they see this and they know that he's back next week after going to hospital and getting an ambulance, they now refuse to believe that any wrestler is really injured in the ring. So that's unfortunate to be a wrestler. Now you never know as a fan if they're injured or not.
It's difficult now, isn't it? I remember seeing it last year of Dunstan man planted his own death, and the week after Chris Benoit happened, didn't it? And then he had to go on to Raw to say so-and-so was dead, which actually ruined his pop. But then he went away and returned like a month and a half later. Still flies it. So
wrestling is a weird business, and so it's very coincidental that these things happen, unfortunately. Wrestling, it used to have lines which you didn't cross, but now in the entertainment world we're living in, that lines are getting crossed more, that they're doing things which may seem distasteful, but they're doing it to get attention, to get media publicity, for people to talk on Tuesday morning after Monday's show of Raw to say, do you see that Vince McMahon got blown up in the car last night, and to get people talking and then push it to extremes. And Vince McMahon said something very true on a documentary called Beyond the Mat. He says that WWE makes movies, and that's what Vince McMahon takes a lot of his inspiration from, is that every week's show he treats it like a movie, like a piece of entertainment. And of course in movies you see lots of special effects, lots of things blowing up, so he tries to bring that type of atmosphere and to get that sort of crowd in to watch wrestling by doing it. But like I say, unfortunately, the week after that happened, he planted his own death, he blew up in a car. The next week on Raw, they carried on